Hello Electroheads, my name is Rich and I hate SUVs. They're big, they're ugly, they are rubbish to drive and they are just completely bloody unnecessary.
That was mean.
Some facts. The average journey length in the UK in a car is 8 miles with 1.2 occupants. So why are we addicted to driving these massive gas-guzzling SUVs with hundreds of miles of potential range on short city drives? All it serves to do is take up unnecessary space on our roads and pollute the air that we breathe. And I say this all as a car fanatic, somebody who sees cars not just as vehicles but as moving pieces of art, maybe even living entities.
Cars are living entities. You can develop a relationship with a car.
Oh God, I've gone full Clarkson. Never go full Clarkson. Not to sound too dramatic, but we have a ticking time bomb of a problem in our cities. Cars already take up way more space than pedestrians, cyclists and public transport users. Now, I definitely used to see those people as second-class citizens because I do love cars, but how is it right that somebody in a massive SUV is allowed to take up way more space on their morning commute than, say, half a dozen cyclists? That's just not fair. Sounded a bit Partridge there. That's not fair.
This is great banter.
Roads dominate our urban spaces, yet these roads are always completely jammed at rush hour. And when the roads are jammed, these big ICE vehicles trundle along at average speeds of less than 10 miles an hour. In fact, the average speed in central London of a car is 7.1 miles an hour, i.e. jogging pace. And all of those nasty fumes from these exhausts just sit in the air, causing a ton of health problems for people in densely populated areas. 1 in 5 deaths globally is now the direct result of pollution from burning fossil fuels, according to research undertaken by a group of top universities, including Harvard. So there's no getting over the fact that when somebody drives through a city in an oversized car for a journey that could be taken on public transport, it could be walked, or could be taken on a bicycle, they are unnecessarily contributing to one of the main causes of premature death globally. According to recent figures, the death toll from pollution is 6 times higher than war deaths, murders, and terrorist attacks combined. Meanwhile, scooters, which have no emissions whatsoever at the point of travel, are banned in this country.
Makes total sense.
And cyclists are forced to weave in and out of traffic, jostling for space between wing mirrors and the pavement. It just doesn't make any sense at all. Now, if you own an SUV and you use it primarily for long distance trips with loads of luggage and 4 people in the back, then that's absolutely fine. This rant isn't directed at you, but please just make sure it's a nice electric SUV, like the VW ID4, which we recently reviewed right here. But my question for you, Electroheads, is how do we get people to ditch these whopping great gas guzzlers and switch to vehicles that have no tailpipe emissions, such as electric cars, electric scooters, even bicycles, or even just f***ing walk? There are many different schools of thought here, and I want to take a look at a few of them. Let's start with a fun one from Top Gear's Chris Harris, the guy that's not Paddy McGuinness or the cricket player. This is what Twitter was invented for, short, random thoughts that cause a massive argument. You love to see it. Chris writes, how to make petrol/diesel drivers go electric, 2-tier speed limit on the motorway, 70 miles an hour for fluid burners, 90 miles an hour for electric cars. Think a few people might swap. Right, so I actually think this theory could work, although I would tweak it slightly. Petrol cars should only be allowed to go 50 miles an hour on the motorway, and electric cars should only be able to go 70 miles an hour on the motorway, and petrol cars should only be in the slow lane with lorries and buses and other annoying things.
Such a smart one.
My reasoning for that is that most EV drivers don't actually want to go 90 miles an hour on the motorway because it demolishes the range of an electric car, but also speed kills, and there's no point replacing deaths from pollution with deaths from high-speed collisions. And I think you need to add in the clause about petrol drivers sticking to the slow lane because it frees up the other lanes and it stops petrol drivers going 50 miles an hour in the fast lane just to spite everybody else. It's worth noting that this was a quick quip from Chris Harris on Twitter and probably wasn't intended to be massively overanalyzed by a random ginger bloke on a YouTube video. So let's just bear that in mind. But it doesn't solve the main issue around ICE vehicles, which is that they are used more so in our urban and city spaces than they are on motorways. Motorways are actually a better place for these cars. So let's look at another leading school of thought around this, and one that carries a lot of weight. Carbon tax. Voters have traditionally voted against carbon taxes because they don't believe they will actually work to reduce emissions. But the latest research shows a very different picture. Analysis from economist Max Rosa shows that not only can a carbon tax lead to a reduction in emissions, it can also lead to economic growth and prosperity. We can have our cake and eat it. Let's take the UK for example, which reduced CO2 emissions by 46% from 1990 to 2018 and saw 48% economic growth. Or Germany, which reduced CO2 emissions by 31% from 1990 to 2018 and saw economic growth of 45% in the same period. As Dutch analyst Auke Hoekstra comments on Max Roser's research, the mainstream thinking nowadays is that taxing emissions can lead to economic prosperity. The polluters pay and the innocent don't have to suffer. But there are two different ways of implementing a carbon tax. A cap and trade model where manufacturers who want to emit carbon need to buy a license to do so, and that license costs money, or the standard carbon tax model where goods and services that lead to carbon emissions are taxed at the point of sale. As Max Roser explains, in both systems the price of any product increases with the amount of carbon emitted in the production of it. The result is that products with a low carbon footprint, like taking the train or solar energy, do not get more expensive, while goods that do create a lot of emissions, like a flight or coal energy, do get more expensive. The cap and trade model punishes rich corporations and would force car companies to drop their ICE models and to more rapidly electrify. But this doesn't do anything about the huge number of ICE cars already on our roads. There are 1.42 billion cars on the roads of this world, and most of those are internal combustion engine cars. A cap and trade carbon tax could take decades to have a significant impact on the air quality in our cities. But a straight up carbon tax, well, that could increase the prices of ICE cars at the point of purchase. And given the high sticker prices of electric cars at the moment, that could just cause people to buy second-hand ICE cars, keeping them on the road. This is far from a straightforward topic, but my personal opinion here, which you are obviously welcome to disagree with, in the comments section of this video, just please do keep it civil, is that we should introduce a cap and trade system on emissions, but governments should also introduce a London ULEZ style tax for people when they're driving cars with tailpipe emissions in inner city areas. But given that I'm just a YouTuber with an obsession with electric cars, I decided to speak to one of those more intelligent men that I mentioned earlier, Auke Hoekstra.
Nailed it.
I often wonder what the best mix is of carbon taxes and of stimulating innovation, because the problem with carbon taxes is, of course, that you basically make the wrong technology a bit more expensive, but you also drive a little bit of an incremental path. You don't make the really radical alternatives cheaper with the carbon tax. And sometimes it makes sense to simply focus on the innovation you want and to stimulate that directly. For example, with the kilometer pricing or something in London, specifically for dirty vehicles, or with making sure that there is enough places to charge, etc. This is basically more surgically precisely aimed at the sort of technological breakthrough you want, right? Or to instigate sharing programs, that sort of thing. You don't automatically get that when you get CO2 tax. Of course, after a while you get it, probably, if the market sort of adjusts to a new mechanism, but it can take a while. And so I'm also very much in favor of making a dual approach, where you basically say we price what we want to price, so that it's basically what you pay is what we want, what we think is fair. But on the other hand, you also help the governments to think a little bit more out of the box, and to pinpoint the low-hanging fruits with some subsidies, for example.
There was a think tank in the UK recently that recommended to the government that we should actually kind of pay people and encourage people to ditch cars and to adopt bikes, e-bikes, scooters. Do you think it's more about incentives than it is about tax? Yeah,
that's basically what I think. I think it's both in the end, but I think incentives gives you quicker results. Let's put it this way, because it's more targeted, and you basically say people, please do this. If you say to people, please stop doing that, then people say, okay, so what am I going to do? No, I don't care, just stop doing that. And that's very technology open, right? In a way, it's a very good approach, because it basically gives people all the freedom in the world to choose the alternatives. But sometimes it is quicker if you just say, what about doing this? And for example, I really like this idea of calculating how much basically cars in the city cost the city, right? So not the traveler itself, but how much nicer your city would be, how much money you could sort of put towards making the city nicer if you imagined, for example, people biking. And then indeed, I could imagine giving people money to bike. Yes, why not? And for example, making it very easy for them to park their bike, making sure they have bicycle infrastructure, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That you don't automatically get with the CO2 price. I mean, in the end, that will sort of be what the market will be working towards, and you might get that. But yeah, putting a bicycle lane or a charge point for electric cars or electric vehicles, by the way, but electric bikes. Putting the right things in place should not be forgotten. That's basically my point.
Well, I don't know about you, but I found that fascinating, and I'm convinced of one thing in particular. We have to come together globally and start listening to people like Alka and Max and take quicker action when it comes to saving ourselves and our planet. This is not a simple topic, but with enough thought and perspective, we could create a fairer system that punishes pollution and incentivizes and encourages the adoption of electric vehicles. But we need to start off with these big corporations that have been getting off scot-free for years, knowing that they could do more, but deciding not to because it's cheaper and it's easier not to. As always, please leave your thoughts and comments below. I'm actually really interested to hear them on this topic. I think it might be a little bit divisive, but I'm prepared for that. We love seeing what you have to say and we always try to respond. At the moment, that's a little bit hard because we're getting loads of comments and loads of new subscribers, which is obviously great. So if this is your first Electroheads video, please do like and please do subscribe and come back for more videos. Press the little bell icon, whatever that's called. And all that's left to say is thank you for our existing subscribers for following us on this journey. It's been awesome, and I think things are starting to take off for us, which is really cool. Thanks for watching and see you next time.